The Canon R5 Mark II is here in my hands, and as a wedding photographer, you might be wondering if it's worth the investment. My review is specifically tailored to wedding photographers like you, but also to those that are interested in doing some hybrid video coverage as well. And not to spoil everything right now, but this is absolutely one of the best hybrid cameras that I've ever used. Gotta get that extra height, you know? Over this video, I will be putting the R5 Mark II to test here in Iceland. Iceland is a pretty unique place to test a camera because of the weather. One, you need a camera that can stand up to the conditions, but two, you have to work fast, really fast. I've never shot wedding photos from a trampoline before. Look at this, perfect timing. That's the thumbnail. Before we get started, if you're interested in getting my free 2.5-hour wedding photography course and my free preset pack and my free wedding day shot list, there is a link if you can find it. Hello there. I'm Taylor Jackson. I am a wedding photographer and have been for about 20 years now. I've photographed over 1,000 weddings all around the world on all different brands. So here on the channel, we use Sony, we use Canon, we use Nikon, we use Fuji. And I do this so that I have a more well-rounded view of what's going on in the industry and I can make better recommendations from a ground level. So if you haven't decided to go Canon yet, I will have some comments on other brands. Also, we're going to start with the shoot first, and then I'm going to get into the talking of the review in a little bit. We're in Iceland today and doing a shoot with Canon R5 Mark II and the 2870 f2, and we're starting with the wilderness trampoline opportunity at our Airbnb. Whatever the most awkward way you can do things now. And at the end of this video, I'm going to show you all the straight out of camera images, so stay tuned for that if that's interesting to you. This is the weirdest first dance I've ever seen in my lifetime. All right, that's probably fine. The Airbnb offers a lot of opportunities here, and one of them is this natural frame right here. Want to try something maybe with the hot tub? You don't have to get in. But whatever is comfortable and possible there, it looks good. Maybe see how wet it is down there, because the hot tub just drains into the grass. Yeah, so if you put your dress down, perfect. Cool. I'm super happy with this, but I guess I'll find some more angles.
Oh, you want us to walk out and you
I think so. I think from up here. Do you want your beer? No. I'll get your beer. So the new goal is to have them, this is actually where we shot the Nikon show, and at the very top of that hill, I don't think 70 is far enough, but I do have a lot of megapixels to crop into, so I think that it will be okay. And they're running down the hill, they're excited. 2870, a lot of people consider this to be the ultimate lens for wedding photography, and I think those people might be right. It's big, it's expensive, and it's heavy, but it takes beautiful photos, and ergonomically I definitely prefer the 24 to 70 f2.8 IS. However, the images from this lens, I would say I prefer quite a lot, so I think I'm willing to put up with the ergonomic discomfort of this lens in order to create some images that I feel like they just have more wow factor for me. Tiny people, big landscape. A 400mm lens might have been the right move here, or a drone would probably be a better move. Autofocus still picks them up, even though they're tiny people. It has a box around both of them. It's pretty impressive, even when they were up at the top there, quite far away. We're walking into the sunset, and it looks fine in real life, but this lens has definitely made the world look better than it does. So yeah, shout out there. And if you guys want to stop there and face each other, and you're going to be silhouetted, and I'll frame the trampoline out. Whenever you're shooting very dynamic scenes like this, shoot as low of ISO as you can, or as low as actual real ISO as you can. So I'm at ISO 100 because I know I'm gonna want to do a little bit to bring some of the dress out, and I am exposing for the highlights of the sunset behind. So this is what it looks like straight at a camera, and this is what it looks like in my edit. So sometimes you have to shoot incorrectly, and you do have to fix it a little bit in post, but It's not really fixing it in post if it's your intention. Oh, and we're getting a little, it's getting more exciting. Oh, let's see what this lens flare's like. Maybe that's the test here. The flare looks nice, soft and wonderful. You can hear the autofocus though. It has like a little beady like, so that's that thing, and I'll try not to get a soaker in a hot spring. The vision is that they were backlit and it looked pretty good if you want that sunset view, but this way lights them a lot better. So you just get that nice natural, this sun now lighting the scene. I usually don't front light couples like this pretty much until a situation like this, or if you have like a really diffuse cloud in front of the sun. And then also I'm positioned significantly below them, so I'm happy to have a nice LCD too. Oh yeah, this is nice. I'm gonna not step on the moss. Hot spring, no hot spring. Okay, gotta get that extra height, you know? Wanna do that one more time and I won't be on the trampoline? It was pretty fun. That's, now we have the Osmo on the trampoline. All right, right there's good. And then just go really slow. Yeah, attempting to do the Northern Lights photo. All right, here we are, Northern Lights. There. Yeah, using the video light to light paint Sarah and Aaron's up here. 15-second exposure on a 2-second timer. And paint kind of like this. All right, we've done it. Thanks for hanging out. 2 in the morning here. That's not the lights. Where are the lights? There they are. I've joked in the past that the Canon R5 II is no release, which means they really did some incremental upgrades, but there was nothing major. I take that statement back a little bit. I was shooting my Canon R6 II next to my Sony A9 III at a wedding last week, and the R6 II honestly felt really slow in comparison. I should also mention that this is very much nitpicking, since both of these cameras are really high level and you can for sure photograph a wedding on a Canon R6, but side by side, it was interesting to notice the comparison. Now this week, using that same A9 III next to the Canon R5 II, I feel like the difference is a lot smaller. Is it the windiest weather you've seen for an event?
I love this shit.
Off we go.
Yeah, man.
Early morning workshop departure for a full, I think we shot for 18 or 20 hours this day. And if you're interested in coming to our next workshop, we're going to be doing one in Majorca in March. So it's going to be warmer and there's going to be a little more ocean. Although there was some ocean present here, it was just cold ocean. And on this day, I'm going to be shooting only the Canon 28-70 f2 on the Canon R5 II.
Thank you all for coming. It's going to be kind of like a long day, but sleep when you're dead, as they say. But Taylor and I, we've done a lot of workshops together, like 3 or 4. Yeah. We've got a good flow. If you guys have never done a workshop ever, I guess my tip for you.
In a situation like this, I would go back a lot and zoom in as much as I can because I want to bring the background like really close to me. So if you're at 70 or whatever your most zoom is, it'll just make stuff look a little bigger. On the R5 II, one of the biggest upgrades was autofocus. And again, while it's hard to even criticize autofocus at this point because it is so good across all brands, the Canon R5 II feels like a pretty big leap for me. Shooting it side by side with my A9 III, it is very similar. And if anything, this Canon actually comes with some features that my Sony doesn't have. I would for sure consider the Canon R5 II to be the new standard at the $4,000 price point. But that said, the Nikon Z8 is already priced at $4,000 and it's an incredible camera with no mechanical shutter and it has a lot of the same features to what I'm going to talk about throughout the rest of this review. So now, just Sony is missing something great at that product price point that comes with a lot of features in here. The Canon R5 Mark II comes with all the things that I need as a wedding photographer and hybrid video creator, but it does come with one sad thing for anyone in the Canon ecosystem. More on that in a minute, but you probably already know what it is. The Canon R5 Mark II has 2 card slots. One is CF Express and the other one is SD. You can record photos and videos to both cards simultaneously. Sorry, Nikon, for recording videos to one card only. Very sad. 4K 60, no crop, and you can set 4K 60 and manual video settings to work while you're in photography mode. This is a place that the R6 and I think the R6 II as well makes me a little bit sad. So while I'm taking pictures and I'm in photography mode, I can just hit this record button up here and it launches me into my C3 settings. So if you save your manual video settings to C3, it just makes it really easy to use this camera. It's hybrid. If you're on an R6 and you hit the record button when you're in photography mode, regardless of what you do, it just launches you into automatic video mode and you don't really have a lot of controls. You have an exposure comp, but there's not much else you get beyond that. Another thing I'm happy to see in the Canon R5 Mark II is that the IBIS quirks seem to be addressed. If you watch some of our older videos on the channel, the edges really feel like a warp stabilizer failed in post, and the image is just really not that great. And even though I'm not shooting with a super wide, everything that I filmed at 28, I've had no issues on the edges. Overall, I didn't have any major issues and there is for sure an improvement. The Canon ergonomics are also really nice. I actually left this one pretty close to how it comes out of the box and I am happy with it. That means that ISO is on the back dial here, shutter on the front, and aperture is on the Canon fidget spinner wheel. One request would be if Canon could implement a one-button APS-C crop mode, or APS-C mode being active only when you hit the button down and you're actively pressing it. This feature is copyright Jason Vincent. He brought it up at Sony Kondo a few weeks ago. Here's a picture of him at 16 millimeters. APS-C crop mode is very useful on this camera. The camera comes with 45 megapixels in full frame, and that means that APS-C crop mode will actually give you 17 megapixels, which is nice for weddings. I typically only use this during ceremonies or maybe to get a little bit tighter to the podium during speeches, but it's something that I use at every wedding. While I haven't tested it extensively, I'm very happy with the low light performance and autofocus in low light environments. I've had no issues and wouldn't really expect anything to complain about. The menu system overall is also good and no complaints there either. One thing I will mention here is that I've had really great battery life performance from this camera. I am someone that turns the camera off and on all day, and I don't know if that makes battery performance better or worse, but it seems to be working for me, and at the workshop here, I only used one battery for the entire day. And I think overall I took around 3,000 images. There is a new Canon battery type with a fancy line on it, and if you're using older batteries, only certain video modes will work. I haven't really gone too far into that, but you get a pop-up and it tells you sometimes you just can't do what you're trying to do using that battery. If you're using the new battery, you'll have no problems at all. I haven't got any overheating warnings yet, but we're in Iceland where it's a little bit cooler, but I haven't heard any reports of overheating from anyone that's been using this camera. Now, let's talk about lenses for a minute. The lens ecosystem for Canon is really nice, with one small problem. There are no useful third-party lenses. I understand that this is business to help them make more money and invest more in their cameras and make more stuff, but they have to know that it's hurting their business and turning customers against them. And a lot of those customers are going to Sony and Nikon with their new f1.4 lenses that are really, really nice to use. That said, Canon has made some interesting lenses like this here 28-70 f2 and also the 24-105 f2.8, but I find them to be, well, as you can see, pretty large. This includes the 85 1.2 and the 51 2 that's great, but again, I'd prefer a pro level 1.4 version to save the weight and the cost also. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that I don't love the Canon lens scene right now, and I feel a little bit like they're taking advantage of their supporters. Again, I understand that it's business, but leasing their lens mount also would generate business. For older EF lenses, I've used a lot of them through the adapter on other Canon cameras, and I've always been happy with them. Those EF lenses will for sure work better on your Canon R5 Mark II than they would on a 5D Mark IV. If you're already in the Canon ecosystem with a lot of lenses, you can probably just ignore this next part. part. The camera companies overall are so balanced these days that there's barely any reason to choose one over the other. But I will make some supporting points for other brands here in case you're currently considering multiple options. Nikon is crazy good right now, good lens lineup and pro level f1.8 glass. And then the f1.2 glass if you just want to get crazy, and very affordable f1.4 glass. The only thing that Nikon lacks for me is that they only allow their cameras to record video to a single card slot. I know this keeps a lot of the cinema heavy folks away and even the hybrid shooters until they make this change. Nikon also allows third-party glass like the wonderful and lovely Tamron 35-150 f2 to f2.8 and also the Tamron 28-75 G2, which are two lenses that I love. For Sony, as I record this, they're kind of in a weird spot on their release schedule. The A7 R5 would be the closest competitor, but it does some things that don't really work for me as a hybrid creator. 4K 60 does come with a small crop, and the buffer is a little bit slow to quickly switch between photo and video mode. Then Sony's A7 IV is also a 4K 60 APS-C crop, but it's also roughly half the price of the Canon R5 Mark II. One of the main differences between Canon wins this one, versus Sony is the screens. I don't know what Sony does, but they put terrible LCD screens in. Shooting this side by side with the A9 III, which is their very expensive camera, I 100% prefer the Canon screen. It looks amazing, and you're just really excited taking photos out in the field. It kind of surprises you and impresses you sometimes. And then there's Fuji. Fuji is great, I love them. The X-T5 is a wonderful camera, and your setup is going to be a lot smaller and a lot less expensive. The only downside is it is APS-C crop mode all the time. I personally don't use Fuji a whole lot for weddings, so it might make sense to check out another channel if you're interested in a Fuji versus Canon comparison. Is it worth the upgrade? It's really hard to say. The R5 is a very strong camera, and if you can get a good deal on one or you already own one, I probably wouldn't sell it, asterisk, to go all in on the Canon R5 Mark II. While there are some nice updates, I would personally be waiting for the next release to consider it. If you're on another Canon DSLR or an entry-level mirrorless and you're looking at this camera, I would say yes, it's going to be a very nice time for you. But then it kind of comes back to my last point that if you can get a gently used R5, would that make more sense? Save the money, put it into glass. In my honest opinion, yes, I would save that money and put it into lenses, especially if you're a photographer. While you do get a nice boost in autofocus performance, I was really happy with the original R5. Side by side, you are going to see a difference, but it's going to be very minimal. If you're heavy on the video side of things or you need high frame rates and less rolling shutter, the R5 Mark II is probably going to make a lot more sense for you. But for wedding photography, it's really a hard call. It's nice to have the latest and greatest, but it is hard for me to make the R5 Mark II my recommendation hands down when considering budget. So in summary, if you do sports, action, wildlife, and also weddings, R5 Mark II is probably gonna make more sense. If you do video, the R5 Mark II is also going to be my call. However, if you are wedding photography only, I would recommend the original R5 and spend your savings on glass. All right, now let's go through some straight out of camera images. If you're interested, my preset pack is available. If you're a member and you're on the member site, you have access to it. Or if you do buy the preset, the complete collection, I have been updating it, so I haven't started a new one every year. That if you do purchase that, and if you purchased that collection in the past, you should have access to all the newest presets. The ones you saw in the video was from my M preset, which is, I would consider it to be my main preset. And it's also interesting because I do shoot all the brands. I use that preset on both Sony and Canon and Nikon as well. So it's interesting that it carries over. So up here you will see my settings: lens millimeters, ISO, aperture. Pretty much aperture is going to stay at f2 most of the day unless it's a really landscape driven shot, and shutter speed is usually the one that roams. ISO, maybe I didn't do everything exactly correctly. I probably should have had this at 100 ISO and bin shutter 1/1000 or something, but I didn't, and I think that's fine. All right, let's go. Feel free to stop at any time if there's an image that sticks out to you. Very consistent lighting, no changes in settings so far other than the lens millimeters. The Canon R5 Mark II, I would say overall I was very happy with the files. The files did pretty much what I wanted them to do. Straight out of camera, the images look good. And also on the screen, I would say is also very, very important. It gets you kind of hyped up whenever you see a good photo on the screen and you're excited about it and you're like, yeah, I'm such a good photographer. I was thinking about removing these people, but I kind of just like them being there. I feel like that's a very Icelandic shot. You also get a little bit at 28 here. It's almost looking like you're getting some wide angle distortion. I guess maybe you are a little bit. This is also a good one. 360 stick and without. So my workflow for a situation like this is I'll go through and I'll tag everything, usually with a green label. And if it's an image that I'm going to be including kind of in a final catalog, I will go through and I will remove anyone that needs to be removed or any distracting objects like these down here, if it is an image I'm going to deliver. And if it's not, then I just leave it tagged red. And I guess that's my initial call. So this isn't every image I took. This is the initial selection, which is about 300 images. We were very fortunate this day. It was supposed to be raining and gale force winds all day, which I guess was like 110 kilometer an hour winds, or 65-ish, 70 miles per hour, maybe is my guess. And yeah, it was going to be a really terrible day. It was supposed to rain 100% of the time. A low pressure system was moving in, and it ended up kind of working out okay. We got a little bit of mist at the first stop here, and then it rained every time we got in the car for the rest of the day, which is amazing. So Iceland could not have worked out better for this day. This is where Alex and Kinsey actually got engaged for real. So last year on a workshop, Alex proposed to Kinsey right in this spot. We kind of got weathered in because it was raining, and it was also, the tide was really, really high at Black Sand Beach here. Also, it's weird to call it Black Sand Beach because there's many black sand beaches around Iceland, but I think this is the more famous one, I guess. Sorry to sit here silently. I'll sing to you. Starting right now. I'm kidding, I'm not going to sing to you. Overall, just really, really happy with these straight-to-camera files. I obviously tweaked them a bit, my colors and post-production. I'm also really happy with everything at f2 here. There are a few instances that it will usually select them, so it'll put a box around them and it'll know that they're the subject. But sometimes like this, I feel like the focus point is maybe right about here. So maybe it decided that this was more important than the people in the photo. You can, so I had my camera set to automatically switching between people, animal, car, and it's a little more kind of doing its own thing sometimes. If you do want to make sure that it just only selects people, you can just switch that to people and save the camera some decisions, and I don't know, maybe even save some battery. If that's how that works. Less decisions for the camera, maybe less battery overall. This is a really cool spot. This is Eugene. And Cole, my partner on this workshop, is I would consider him to be an Iceland elopement expert. I think he's done like 40 or 50 weddings in Iceland. And he's probably run this workshop maybe 15 times. I've done it 3 times with him. And he knows some very nice spots. We also rented this very nice Defender. And I took a bunch of pictures of it. I won't show you all of them. I'll show you the ones with people. And high frames per second. Didn't think we were going to get into that. But yeah, overall, very happy with the FPS here. Here we go, another one. This is for Cole's wall. And as you can see, the license plate, someone else was doing this before we got this vehicle because they ripped the license plate off. Anyways, really, really nice. Really high frame rate capture, was actually surprisingly good. It's, again, not something you're going to use all the time, but I did end up using it at least right now. And then maybe on a wedding day, there's some situations, for instance, a Jewish ceremony, maybe they're going to be breaking the glass and you want to catch that decisive moment. That would be a situation that I would maybe go into high frame rate capture, or if there was just something happening that needed more frames to catch that exact moment. We walked out to this this island here. So there's a water crossing. So none of the tourists were out here. So we kind of had our own little space, which is kind of cool. It was a very, very, very busy day here at the waterfall. The initial plan was to get out to the Black Sand Beach for basically sunrise, but we looked at the weather and the weather was not going to cooperate with that plan. So we started a little bit later. So we came back through more tourists, which was unfortunate. But with this, this space, I feel like we did pretty good. So yeah, bring your waterproof boots so you can do some light river crossings, if ever required in Iceland. This is also a cool waterfall. I never knew about this one, and then Cole brought us here, and it was down a pretty bumpy dirt road. And yeah, I don't know. I also, so in terms of the IBIS, the stabilization, I was very, very happy with the IBIS, and I actually did, let's get to them right there. So I was actually doing some 1/13 of a second, 1/8 of a second, 1/8 of a second, half a second, so I didn't have an ND, so everything's a little overexposed. But pulling that back, I feel like will be okay. And if you are doing something like this, you just have to make sure that the couple stands mostly still, or you take a lot of photos really quickly and hope that they are not blurred for one. But 1/8 of a second looks pretty nice in a scene like this. If the couple is in front of the waterfall, it doesn't make so much sense to do this because they're going to be, the waterfall is going to be softened naturally out of focus anyways. But when they're kind of behind or on top of a waterfall, it's a nice effect. You can choose it or you can not choose it. That's why I did a little bit of both. Climbing up the waterfall. And now we're inside. So in terms of high ISO, this is ISO 5000, so not extreme high ISO. I would say in terms of wedding photography, I don't find myself going to extreme ISOs much beyond maybe this 5000. I would say that 5000 is the maximum that I'll go to, or maybe 6400, because I usually have the correct lens to use on a wedding day. So if I am in a situation like this, I'm probably just going to go to a prime lens, or maybe this 28 to 70 f2, because it is an f2 aperture, and it'll let enough light in that I don't have to crank the ISO. What you do lose in high ISO is you lose a little bit of that dynamic range, and your photos might be a little bit grainy. I overall didn't really notice any issues at all in terms of when I was editing these images. You can see that maybe there's a little bit of, I think there's some noise reduction going on in the camera. I might turn that off, or the focus is just slightly off. But overall, I would say that I'm pretty darn happy with the performance of this high ISO image. In terms of autofocus performance in darker environments, I had no issues at all, and I wouldn't really suspect having any issues. So if you are in a reception space and you're shooting with a prime, or you're shooting with a lens like this f2, I don't suspect you'll have any problems. We also lit this off camera off to the side there. I had a roto light. Thanks, I believe, Eugene, who brought that. And it really kind of helped, because this scene with no additional lighting was, I don't know, it might have been an f1.4 scene, because it was just all candlelit inside a cave with no bounce. So happy that we had a little off-camera light there. All right, now moving up to what Cole calls the Cliffs of Death. No one has died on it that we know of, but it's a pretty cool, scary cliff. And it was really windy up here, impossibly windy even. So this is where we got the gale force winds. So all day with this, this is day one of the workshop, or I guess it was a one-day workshop, so this is the day of the workshop. And while we did get some misty weather conditions, I was never concerned with the camera or the lens. The weather sealing and just the weather properties of cameras these days, I am quite happy with. Make sure you leave your hot shoe cover on. If I would suspect that would be a likely failure point, that if you're in the pouring rain, it's nice to have that hot shoe cap on just to keep the water off of it. The one that comes on the R5 Mark II is challenging to get off, to say the least, so maybe just you get to leave it on all the time. I also didn't do any lighting at all in terms of flash or in terms of speed light, so that is a future thing that I will be doing actually this coming weekend. So I shot these incorrectly in post because I didn't want to blow out these highlights. I think digital is it's the opposite of film. So if I was a film photographer, I would be very much exposing for these shadows down here and letting the highlights go, because I know I had the latitude to bring it back. With digital, it is the flipped, where you usually have less latitude in the highlights. So as long as you're kind of like, I feel like these are borderline, that they're obviously clipped in the histogram here, but they're not that clipped. They're just like a little bit gone. So I will bring those back in post-production and boost up the shadows. I use a company called Imagen to do my editing a lot of the time, and they'll actually do subject masks for you. So it's all automated. There's a link in the description if you want to get 1,500 free edits to get started. If you use that link, you get 1,500 rather than the 1,000 you would just get if you sign up to the regular website. But what it will do is what you saw in the video, that those edits were pretty much finalized by Imagen. I didn't do a whole lot beyond that, and it will detect where your subject is, and it will add a little bit more exposure or tweak the white balance if they're in a mixed lighting environment, just subtly. And you can also dial it back if you don't like it, or you cannot use it at all, but in this case it really helped a lot. A scene like this, properly balanced, so not really required, but it still will make your couple pop just a little bit. Love that I left this in here. This is really the focal point for me, this propane tank. It's a pretty nice propane tank, to be honest. That one might have to go away. They finally added a rope here. So this is it's a natural hot spring hot tub, but it is kind of covered in algae everywhere. So it's a bit slippery. And I feel like a lot of people have taken some pretty big spills in here. So I'm happy that we finally have a rope. A scene like this, I probably should have been, I'm at 160 ISO. I probably should have just stuck to 100 to make the dynamic range the best possible. Really, really nice lighting here. And at this part of the day, we were like, wow, it's clear. Hopefully we get some northern lights. And then the northern lights radar, there's an Aurora app, and it usually gives you a KP index between, I would say 3 is like a mid, like you're likely going to see some activity. And whatever the max is, an 8 or a 10 is you're for sure going to see activity as long as the sky is clear. And we were unfortunately sitting at a 1 all night. So there was the tiniest square of northern lights moving across the sky, but we waited a long time for the peak of it to go right over top of us, and we did end up seeing some northern lights. So you'll see those photos in a second here. Another scene where it was important to underexpose it to make sure that I keep all the detail in those clouds. I'm not too nervous, especially with this camera, that even if I am kind of underexposed here, I know that detail is not going to go away. If I make it a pure black, then yeah. So if it's completely stacked and just stacking up on the histogram on this side, yeah, it might be a problem. But for this, I also knew that I wasn't going to be making a full HDR image from this. So I kind of exposed it where I knew that I could bump up the shadows and make the image that I wanted. This was mystery lighting. It ended up being okay, but it was a bit of a weird lighting color and pattern. This is my shadow right here. I tried so hard to get my shadow out of it, but I couldn't, so we had to do this scene instead, so my shadow is no longer there. Maybe it's better for lighting anyways. Tyler, he's the one that filmed a bunch of the video that you saw at the beginning. Jace, his partner. And regular clothes, because not every image has to be in a wedding outfit. All right, here we go. So this was my test shot to be like, are there northern lights out there? As you can see, I was doing, if you've seen northern lights before, this show was on an intensity scale. You could see that it was green, and you could see a little bit of purple, but you needed a 15-second exposure to really bring anything out properly. So I was also at f2.8 because I'm now on the 16mm f2.8, and ISO 2500, and I'm very happy with it. But a 15-second exposure, as you can see, the stars start to move a little bit, and also your couple has to stand completely still, otherwise they blur out like that. So they're a little blurry in some of the shots. This one was pretty solid, I would say. That one's probably my favorite. So it involves some structure, which I thought was interesting, and I don't know, a glass ceiling, which is not something you usually see, I guess, in Northern Lights photo, and it frames them nicely. So I'm the happiest with this. I had to do some work on it to, I overlit them, so I was lighting everything with my flashlight on my phone, and I was just kind of going around them in a semicircle. And we were also battling, we knew that it was only going to be maybe a 10-minute show, so we enjoyed the lights first, and then Sarah was like, should we change quickly? And then they did, and we got these photos. So a photo like this maybe shows more of the actual intensity of the storm, that to your eye, you could see it, but it's barely there. This you could see though. This is really cool. This here. As long as you're doing a somewhat appropriate ISO, so ISO 2500. If I was at 6400, I would start to lose a lot of detail in the sky, and it would become more challenging for me to pull the color I wanted. But at 2500 ISO, I had no problems whatsoever. This image is very blurry. Probably would have been better just to use a softbox and do a single pop so that they were just frozen, and then once they were in darkness, they could move around and it wouldn't blur them. But we did the best we could in the 10-minute window. What is the timing? When did we begin? So first Northern Lights image, 8:54, and then it kind of dulled out a little bit in the center, and then it kind of came back towards the end, and it was this weird cloud deck that it was kind of affecting. So we got a little bit of time out of it, but overall I would say typically if you're in Iceland and you get a nice Northern Light show, it's probably going to be sometimes a couple of hours and really, really intense and almost overwhelmingly wonderful. This, not quite that, but we saw Northern Light, which is wonderful, and I have no complaints. There it is. Straight out of camera images. If you are interested in getting that free 2.5-hour wedding photography course that comes with my preset pack and many more extras, there is a link in the description for that. And otherwise, if you have any questions, feel free to put them down below and I'll do my best to answer them. I will be using this camera over the next couple of months for weddings, so if you're interested in that, maybe subscribe to the channel, turn the bell on, and you'll see a lot more content